Welcome back to Another World Audiobooks. We have arrived, the final chapter of Meet the Tiger. I hope you guys are excited. It is a very good chapter, I can tell you, because I've already narrated it, so I know what happens in it. That's how audiobook narration works, just in case you hadn't. I get a preview, which is pretty cool. And you know who else gets a preview? That's right, patrons. If you are signed up to be a patron, you got this chapter way before everybody else, which is really awesome. Nice little perk of being a patron, so make sure to go check that out. Again, that's anotherworldaudiobooks.com. Sign up to be a patron, support the podcast, help me continue to bring you awesome content like this, and you get awesome stuff in return as a thank you for being such a great supporter of the podcast. So thank you guys so much for listening and for coming along on this journey as we wrap up Meet the Tiger. I'm so excited to bring this to you and excited for what's coming next. So without further ado, let's jump into the final chapter of Meet the Tiger. Chapter 20. The Last Laugh. "Things have gone very badly," said the tiger. "As Bittles said, Mr. Templar, you have beaten us. I bear you no malice. Perhaps it was ordained that it should end like this. You need not be afraid that I shall kill you, as that man would have done. That would be profitless. I might still have won if I had had a fair chance, but the men I trusted double-crossed me. Now the ship is going down, and all my work is lost. I can fight no more. Fate has been against me from the beginning, and I am very tired." He passed a hand across his eyes. The fatuous pose which went with the character of Algy Lomas Coper had fallen from his shoulders like a discarded cloak. And it was an ordinary man who spoke. More than that, it was a broken man. There was something which filled the saint with a sneaking sense of tragedy about this sudden transition from the effervescent Algy to the grim, weary figure of the tiger facing the end. "But you..." The tiger's burning gaze raked over Bittle and Bloom and Mags like a searing iron. Once again, the tiger's voice took on that biting tang of steel, and the men cringed from the lash of it. "But you treacherous dogs, you perfidious scum, you abject rats, you shabby, contemptible, paltry vermin, against you I do bear malice. I came down to meet you on the quay, do you remember? And you shot me down without a word. It was only a graze, but it stunned me, and to make sure, you shot me again in the body as I lay there. I found the bullet afterwards, and there was the bruise on my chest, under my heart, to prove it. But I always wear a bullet-proof waistcoat. You couldn't know that. I lived and swam out here with that girl to win back what was mine. I might have done it, but I'm not such a good swimmer as I thought I was, and it took me a long time to recover after I got on board. So I only arrived in time to hear your speeches, Bittle, and hear Templar tell you how he had beaten you." The tiger looked out at the sea. "We are sinking quite slowly," he said. "There will be plenty of time for all of you to put off in the boats. I mean you." He looked around at the guard. "You at least are not traitors. You have simply obeyed the orders of these three men, and it was not your place to question them. I have no grudge against you. You are only the tools. You may go." The men stared at each other and at the tiger incredulously, as though they could not believe their ears. The tiger stepped out of the doorway and waved them through, his lips curling contemptuously. One by one, they crept furtively past him, and as they gained the deck, made a rush for the companions to the boat level, casting fearful backward glances as though they expected him to repent of his decision and call them back. At last, they had all gone. The saint stood up and stretched himself, and the ropes fell away from his wrists and ankles. He even had time to enjoy and appreciate the sensation which his escape act caused to everyone present. "Quite a good curtain," he remarked. He looked at the tiger and smiled ruefully. "I congratulate you, Algy. You had me guessing all the time. Well, it's been a good dust-up. And now, may I undo Oris?" "Certainly." Simon walked up to Bittle and took Anna and Belle from the man's pockets. In a few quick slashes, Oris was free and chafing his hands and stamping up and down to restore the circulation. Then the saint replaced the knives in their sheaths and went over to Patricia. He took her in his arms and kissed her, and, the reaction coming at last, she clung to him like a child, and the saint was murmuring soothing and meaningless things to stop her trembling. "Now, Mr. Templar," said the tiger, "you may take your friends and get away in one of the boats. I am staying behind to settle accounts with my friends." Simon passed the girl over to Oris. "I'll follow in a moment." Patricia went, with Oris's protecting arm around her, but the tiger stopped them at the door and took the girl's hand. "You will never be able to forgive me," he said, "and I am only thankful now that the power to do you any harm was taken away from me. I am a bad man, and I have blood on my hands, but you are the first woman who ever tempted me to forget my chivalry." He kissed her hand, and then Oris led her away. The tiger looked at Simon. "It's a queer whim," he said, "but I should like to shake hands with you." "You make it difficult for me," answered the saint. "I'm rather sorry you've taken things so sportingly, but I'll shake hands for that very reason." The saint held out his hand and smiled. Crack! The bullet actually grazed Simon's arm, and he saw Algy's eyes glaze over suddenly. The saint was still holding the tiger's hand. A great silence followed the reverberation of the shot, and in that silence, without a word, the tiger swayed and toppled to the floor. He lay there on his back, and above his heart, in the dark stuff of the bathing costume which he still wore, a darker stain was spreading. The saint bent over him, but the man was dead. Simon took in the situation out of the corner of his eye. Mags and Bloom were crouching back against the bulkhead, but Biddle stood up, still holding the smoking revolver which he had snatched from the floor while the tiger's attention was distracted. The saint straightened up, and in the same moment Anna flashed from her sheath to his right hand and whistled across the saloon like a humming flake of light. It drove into Biddle's exposed wrist, severing flesh and sinew and grating on the bone, for the saint could throw knives with unerring accuracy. Biddle's hand relaxed limply. He dropped the revolver and flinched back, clawing at the knife which still hung from his arm. The saint was standing across the tiger's body, with both the tiger's automatics trained on the little group. "Treacherous to the last, Biddle," said the saint, "but I saw you, and for that shot you will hang in Exeter in about 3 months' time." And at that instant the ship was flooded with a blinding light. Over the saint's shoulder, the 3 men could see, far astern, the blinding eyes of 2 powerful searchlights which converged on the ship. "That will be Khan," said Simon, without taking his gaze from his prisoners, and at that moment Oris and Patricia returned, sick with fear, for they had heard Biddle's shot. "Only scratched me," the saint reassured them, but he got the tiger. He passed the automatics over to Oris and went out on the deck. The pursuers were still a long way behind, but they were creeping up fast, and the ship could not have hoped to escape them, with those great beams of light turning darkness into day. "This is the end of the adventure," said the saint, with his arm round Patricia's shoulders. "But, by the grace of God, it is also a beginning." It was some minutes later that he remembered an important detail. He was reminded of it by seeing the sea swelling up alarmingly close to the starboard scuppers, and in the next second he nearly lost his balance as the deck canted further over. The saint sprinted astern, sliding and stumbling all over the place. The girl saw him disappear down a companion from the deck, and waited, clinging to a handrail, for balance was becoming more and more difficult. It was some time before he came back, and by then the pursuit was barely a quarter of a mile away. The saint went into the saloon, and found Oris braced against the table for support, but still dutifully covering the now terror-stricken trio. Simon used up the remains of the rope which had been employed on Oris and himself, and at the end of the performance, Biddle and Bloom and Mags were trussed hand and foot beyond all possibility of escape. The saint and Oris between them dragged the men out on the deck. By then the ship had stopped altogether, and rolled low and sluggishly in the oily billows. The pursuing boats were closing in on either side, and the saint climbed to the upper deck and stood in the full glare of the searchlights. In a moment, Khan's voice hailed him through a megaphone. "What happened? Are you all right?" Marvellous! Simon called back cheerfully. We've got 3 prisoners, and 1 corpse waiting for you. I'll be on board in 2 minutes, said Khan, and was as good as his word. He came up the rope ladder, and the saint met him on the deck. You look as if you'd been wrecked, were his first words. We can talk later. Better hurry up and get everybody off before she goes down. The saint surprised Patricia as much as Khan. Wrecked nothing. I told Bittle and Co. we were going down, but we aren't. Oris and I just fixed the pumps and left them running so as to run all the water out of the port ballast tank and fill up the starboard one. I've just reversed the arrangement, see? She's evening up already. Simon showed Khan all the exhibits, and the detective was staggered. That tiger had us all skinned, he said. They sat in the saloon and exchanged notes. Khan had been lucky enough to find a couple of new submarine-chasing motorboats lying in Ilfracombe at the end of a trial run, and he was able to catch them with his posse when they were on the point of returning to Bristol. All the same, he remarked, I should have been too late to be any use to you. I take my hat off to you, Saint. What was Lapping in this? Asked Patricia. She told him about her interview that afternoon, and the detective smiled. Lapping knew all about me, of course, he said, and I told you all about how the Saint was trying to cut me out. I expected he thought you were having a dab at pumping him for the Saint's benefit. The Saint did not consider himself bound to say anything about Harry the Duke. Before he let Harry go back to the past of Agatha Girton, he had warned him about the dangers of private feuds, and Harry had seen reason. The Saint had a means to control him. You can tell Lapping that Harry the Duke has decided to forgive him, he said enigmatically. Khan was mystified, but Simon let him be puzzled, and passed on. Now we're all satisfied, murmured Simon. You've got the villains of the piece to take home with you, and I've got the gold. Khan goggled. I'd forgotten that. I was so worried about you and the tiger, he said, and the Saint chuckled. I hadn't forgotten it. I waited to start any ructions until they got it all aboard for me. I couldn't bear to think of all my work being wasted. The Saint looked steadily at the detective. Shall we cry quits, Khan? You know I'm straight, and I want to work this hooker across to New York and return the ducats to the Confederate Bank's agents and collect my reward. It'll just make enough for me to retire on comfortably, and you get all the kudos out of the affair for nabbing the tiger. Is that a bet? Khan held out his hand, and they both smiled. Miss Holmes goes with you, I suppose? I'll ask her, promised the Saint. It'll be easy. These motor ships are dead simple to run, and Oris has as much expert knowledge as we need. America's a big place anyway. We can't miss it altogether, and as soon as we strike the coast, we'll be able to find out where we are, and probably get a navigator. We'll only be able to run in daylight, of course, so it won't be a quick passage. But I can think of worse honeymoons. One of the motorboats had already been sent back in search of the crew which the tiger had allowed to go, and Algy and the 3 prisoners were taken down into the other boat, and the armed men who had swarmed all over the ship returned to their own little craft. Khan was the last to go. Goodbye, Saint, and a good voyage, he said. May you fill many prisons in the course of a prosperous career, returned the Saint piously. It has already been recorded that Oris was in the habit of calling his master every morning with a cup of tea, and commenting on the beauty of the weather. On a certain morning, Oris came up a companion with a cup of tea in each hand. He paused outside a door, and put the cups down so that he could knock. But he did not knock. Instead, he scratched his chin, and argued with himself long and earnestly. Then he picked up the cups again, and went back to the galley, and drank them himself. Only one thing could upset Oris's ingrained sense of discipline, and that was his ingrained sense of the proprieties. The end. Oh man, that was awesome. Man, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. That was a very fun ride. I love the twists and turns. I honestly did not see some of those twists and turns coming, and especially right there at the end. I loved how he didn't actually sink the boat. That was such a nice little twist there as well. So anyway, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on the audiobooks. Please get in touch. Again, that's anotherworldaudiobooks.com. And remember, patrons get this early. They get the full version of the audiobook early as well. So it definitely pays to be a patron, so go check that out. Again, anotherworldaudiobooks.com. I totally understand if you're not able to sign up to be a patron. All that I ask is that you share the podcast with somebody that you know who might enjoy a free audiobook. Please spread the word. That is the best way to help this podcast grow, and the more it grows, the more audiobooks I can bring to you, which is my goal all along. So thanks again, guys, for listening, and I'm so excited to announce what the book is going to be here for starting next week, our brand new book that we're going to be jumping into. You are not going to want to miss it, so stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe. Just drop a review if you enjoyed this book. If you thought it was worthwhile, definitely drop a review and tell other people that this is worth listening to. And if you haven't checked out the backlist, make sure to do that. We've got tons and tons of audiobooks. If you enjoyed this type of book, you would definitely enjoy the Arsène Lupin books, and you can actually buy a bundle. So all 3 Arsène Lupin books we've done. I can't believe we've done 3. It's so crazy. But yeah, you can get all 3 of those basically for the price of one, which is a pretty good deal. No interruptions, no gaps or anything like that. Just book after book after book. I think it's like 20 plus, or no, it's probably closer to 30 hours worth of audiobook goodness there for you there. And again, that's anotherworldaudiobooks.com. You can scroll down to the library section. You can see all the books that we've done and just pick any that you like and check them out. So thanks again, guys, for listening and for sharing the podcast and for coming along on this ride. It's been awesome. So we'll catch you next week with a brand new audiobook.
You can't reason with the sun. Trust us, we've tried. This summer, it's time to put that angry ball of fire on mute. Columbia's OmniShade technology is engineered to protect you from the sun's harsh rays that can burn and damage your skin. The sun is relentless, but so is our gear. Level up your summer at Columbia.com to spend more time outside and less time slathering on aloe lotion. You're welcome. Columbia, engineered for whatever.
The right window treatments change everything. Your sleep, your privacy, the way every room looks and feels. At Blinds.com, we've spent 30 years making it surprisingly simple to get exactly what your home needs. We've covered over 25 million windows and have 50,000 5-star reviews to prove we deliver. Whether you DIY it or want a pro to handle everything from measure to install, we have you covered. Real design professionals, free samples, zero pressure. Right now, get up to 50% off with minimum purchase, plus get a free professional measure at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.